Greetings and welcome to Science at the Drive-In. We're incredibly excited to show you Jurassic Park, one of our favorite science fiction movies of all time. It's a blockbuster. I still remember the first time I saw it. My name is Jonathan Frederick. I'm the director of the North Carolina Science Festival. And this right here is the very first kickoff event for UNC's Science Week. All this week, Moorhead Planetarium and Science Center is producing events that celebrates the science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Tonight, Jurassic Park, it was a game changer, directed by none other than the legend himself, Steven Spielberg, based on the science fiction blockbuster written by the science fiction writer Michael Crichton. We want to bring these dinosaurs back to the big screen, and for some of you, it may be the first time. During the global pandemic, we've been watching things on these little screens, and here's a chance to see everything erupt with all the special effects grandeur on the big screen. And to do that the right way, in honor of Science Week, we wanted to talk to a real-life paleontologist. So with us tonight is Dr. Christian Kammerer. He is a research curator of paleontology at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh, North Carolina. Dr. Kammerer, thank you for being here. Introduce yourself to the people.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Christian Kammerer, and I work at North Carolina's own museum. I'm a paleontologist specializing in prehistoric vertebrates, so that includes basically anything with a backbone, but especially the early representatives of the mammal and dinosaur lineages, things living in the Triassic period, and yes, even getting into at least the early part of the Jurassic period.
So what drew you to paleontology?
I mean, I've always loved fossils, loved prehistoric animals since I was a very little kid, just one of those dino kids. Initially from going to museums, I had the privilege of visiting the American Museum of Natural History in New York when I was a little kid. Was always just, taken with the immense size, the bizarre shape, the fearsome teeth of dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals. So I was already in the tank, as it were, for dinos by the time Jurassic Park came out. But suffice it to say, blew me out of the water and really, took things to the next level in many ways.
That's a great point. What is something you remember? You remember the first time you saw the movie, and what were your impressions?
Yeah, I remember I had to ask my parents to sign, a slip allowing me to see it because it was PG-13 and I wasn't 13 at the time when it came out. And saw it with all the other kids from school actually, and we were just we're terrified, shocked, amazed. Had never seen dinosaurs look like that before. Had seen plenty of dinosaur movies, Godzilla movies, other old movies where it was guys in suits, or it was a sad iguana with spikes and a sail taped to its back and sort of poked along, rear projected against sort of fleeing humans. But this is one of the first times I remember really feeling like these were living things that we could interact with. And yeah, just amazed by it.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. Now, then you went on to become a paleontologist. And just so we all understand, what in basic terms is a paleontologist?
Yeah, sure. So paleontologists are scientists who specialize in mostly extinct life in fossil organisms. So our job is often confused with archaeologists. They're different. Archaeologists study ancient peoples and especially their artifacts and civilizations. Paleontologists study extinct animals, plants, any fossil organisms. And there are a bunch of different branches, whether you're looking at it from a geological side or a more biological side, but that's all sort of under the overarching sort of paleontological framework.
Very cool. Now, we don't want to give anything away in case anyone hasn't seen the movie. It is 28 years old, so we do feel like we're in the spoiler safe zone, but just in case, we may talk about some things here for a couple minutes before we start the movie that could give away some plot points. So if you don't want it ruined, you may want to cover your ears or eat some popcorn. But as a paleontologist, as an expert, what are some things that you really, really like about this movie?
Sure. I mean, like I said, for its time, it was actually highly accurate. They put a ton of work into getting a lot of the science right. And especially so it's out in 1993. And at this point, the connection between dinosaurs and birds has been argued over for a long time, but was still like not quite a slam dunk. Nowadays, it is very well supported. You know, it's settled paleontological science that birds are living dinosaurs. They are descended from the meat-eating dinosaurs, the group called theropods. In the early 90s, that was still like not 100% agreed upon. And so to hear, you know, Alan Grant in the movie talk about dinosaurs flocking like birds, emphasizing some of the more avian traits of the velociraptors. Will always love the end shot of the film, and maybe this is the spoiler, but this is, I won't say what's happening to any of the people at the time, but it's a flock of pelicans soaring over the Pacific Ocean. And it really brings home the fact that, you know, dinosaurs are still with us today, like their descendants are still among us. So that is, you know, the bird connection is a great part of it. Also just like treating dinosaurs not as pure like movie monsters. I mean, certainly the Tyrannosaurus, the Velociraptor are played up for their menacing aspects, like their threats to life and limb of the humans in the movie. But we see, you know, dinosaurs just sort of herding and grazing and, you know, looking out for other members of their species, for their young. Um, they're not just sort of like mindless killing machines for the entire movie. And especially like if you look at Jurassic Park's antecedents, the original King Kong, the 33 King Kong, you know, really was the one that got the ball rolling on monster blockbusters. I mean, you can look to earlier things like The Lost World, but like Kong really sets it going. And I love King Kong. I think it is an incredible film also for its time. But every animal in it is a set piece designed to attack the protagonists. Whether it's a brontosaurus coming up out of the swamp, or a pteranodon flying down out of the skies, or, you know, T-Rex leaping over a chasm to fight with Kong over Fay Ray, everything is just there to try to kill you. And in Jurassic Park, while the dinosaurs are threats, they're also animals that we see doing normal animal things. And I think normalizing that was a great part of it.
It's funny you say that because I have a 4-year-old who loves dinosaurs, and I've noticed that there are no chill pictures of a T-Rex. They are always like, I mean, it's just funny. Like, I guess if you're an artist and you're going to draw one, you're not going to draw one sleeping.
Yeah.
um, okay, so those are some of the things you liked. Now, as an expert and having your expert brain on as you're watching the movie, what are some things, what's some dubious science, or what are some things, some nits you want to pick about this movie that we should keep an eye on as we watch?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned earlier that the bird connection is good, but it also doesn't go far enough, because we know now that Velociraptor was a fully feathered animal. Like, and actually most of the carnivorous dinosaurs would have had feathers. So feathers in many dinosaur groups is now very well established. We have an amazing series of well-preserved fossils, a lot of them coming from northeastern China, but more and more from around the world, showing definitively that many dinosaurs had feathers. There's still some that don't, like, you know, the Brachiosaurus, the duck-billed dinosaurs. We all have scale impressions of those. So some dinosaurs were scaly, but Velociraptor for sure feathered. And that was already, you know, there were scientists arguing that even in the 1980s, so it wouldn't have been out of place to feather them in the movie. With that said, you know, it is, given the time and the debates, I think it is forgivable. I would say it's substantially less forgivable in the Jurassic World series, since those were all made after we have fossils of Velociraptor and its kin with feathers. But maybe that's a different argument for a different day. The other thing about the movie, and this is more of just sort of a foundational issue, is the DNA. So we all love to think that we could find DNA in a mosquito in amber and use it to clone extinct animals. So we now live in enough of the future, if you will, that cloning endangered or even extinct animals is a possibility. You may have seen in the news recently the successful cloning of a 30-year dead cell line of the black-footed ferret, one of North America's most endangered mammals. And this is happening sort of more and more, that some either extremely endangered or sort of recently extinct subspecies, like I think in the Iberian lynx and some goats have also had this happen to them, are being cloned. With that said, those are all from cell lines from samples that have been kept in sort of deep freeze, specifically to keep their cells and their DNA healthy in laboratories. So DNA is a very volatile molecule. It's actually very difficult to keep safe. And the oldest known sort of intact DNA we have actually was just announced last month from mammoth remains, and it's around 1 million years old. So any older than that, it seems DNA denatures very quickly. And certainly once you get back to the Mesozoic, despite occasional claims of having found snippets of DNA, there's no good evidence for any survival of DNA into the Mesozoic. So we probably, even if we had dinosaur, blood cells preserved, we would not be able to get DNA from them. So sort of that core scientific aspect of the movie just is total fiction.
But if I understood you correctly, there could be a mammoth park someday.
Pleistocene Park is possible. So ancient DNA technology is getting better and better. Especially now that we have CRISPR, of new means of genetic manipulation, let's say, of being able to fill in the gaps like Dr. Henry Wu does in the movie with frog DNA. That's not what we would be doing with mammoths. But yeah, it is. I mean, that is still in the science fiction mode. That's probably a few years out. But yeah, I think it's possible within our lifetimes we could get to a cloned mammoth.
That's amazing. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you work at a museum and you do research, and so you have a passion for outreach. And knowing that paleontology is probably very much like other scientific fields, where we want to broaden the field of talent, and we want to diversify and include more people who want to get involved. If I'm out there watching this movie and interested in paleontology, where are some places I could go to learn more, to see if it's a good fit for me in my future?
Yeah, so I can recommend, our own museum, Museum of Natural Sciences, has a lot of good resources. Go to naturalsciences.org. Particularly, our paleontology unit is launching a big community paleontology project related to the dueling dinosaurs, which is a complete Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus skeleton that will be going on display in our halls in the next few years. And that's at duelingdinosaurs.org. So there are places to sign up to actually work with fossils that were found around T-Rex and Triceratops, either in a classroom setting. So if you're a teacher or in a class that will actually have the opportunity to sort through matrix and find fossils, or if you're just at home looking at specimens digitized of like microfossils, little teeth and scutes and things found with these. So that's a way to really get into it quickly. I would also say just go out and look for fossils yourself. So you don't have to go out to Montana, you don't have to go to Isla Nublar to find dinosaurs. So here in North Carolina, we actually have an incredibly rich fossil record. Once you start getting east of Raleigh, that is areas that were underwater until just a few million years ago. So we have an incredibly rich record, especially of marine life, most of them after the age of dinosaurs, but finding things like megalodon shark's teeth, whale fossils, incredible mollusk fossils, all sorts of like snails and clams and oysters and such. And so there's a lot that can be found, both sort of just for your personal interest, for your personal fossil collection, but also we're always looking out for donations and work closely with members of the community to try to get rare fossils sort of preserved at the museum and described. So always happy to work with fossil hunters.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. My last question is the toughest one I'm going to ask. That is, what's your favorite prehistoric creature of all time?
Well, I mean, it's a powerfully difficult question. I'm inclined to choose one of the prehistoric creatures that I've discovered and named, of which there are a number. Actually, this, like the one that I most recently worked on, it just happened to be there. Actually, this was not pre-planned, but this is a sculpture made by a scientific illustrator of this animal called Cungunathon, which some of my colleagues and I described last year from the Triassic of Madagascar. So this is life size. It's just a tiny little thing. But we believe this is close to the common ancestry of dinosaurs and pterodactyls. So going back to sort of even their progenitors before they were alive. And what it's shown us is actually that both of those groups, which we think of as giants, pterodactyls as big as an airplane, dinosaurs, of course, renowned for their size, come from extremely small creatures from very humble origins. And that tells us a lot about sort of their early paleobiology. So this one has a soft spot in my heart at the moment. I will say, going back to when I was a kid, I was always a Triceratops fan. So for best dinosaur, it's hard to topple old three horns.
Yeah, absolutely. And yours is much cooler than the one I wasn't sure if I was going to pull out. My kids' stuffed animal, but yeah, what a great answer. Before everyone fastens their seatbelts and flies off in the helicopter to Jurassic Park, are there any other facts or things you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. So in the very beginning of the movie, when they go out to a real dinosaur dig site, where Sam Neill and Laura Dern's characters are doing their research, I think it tells us a lot about both the public perception of paleontology and actually strikes down a pretty common myth. One is that we have a lot of money. No, if some random rich guy came out to our dig site and said, "We'll fund your dig for a year. You have to come with me to a mysterious island where you might die," of course we'd say yes. It's a lot easier than putting in a grant with NSF to do that. The inaccurate part is when they land and it's just a complete velociraptor skeleton perfectly exposed at the surface. Never in my life on all of my digs has anything like that come out. Usually, it is a few broken bones at the surface, or if we do find more of a skeleton, you have to very carefully cover it in plaster to protect it, mostly just from bouncing around in the truck, but also against any possible rich guy helicopter landings. So yeah, I get the idea that for a cinematic perspective, you want to see the skeleton all laid out and beautiful, but never going to happen in real life.
Gotcha. You sure it's not that easy? It takes a lot more.
Oh, we also don't have any way to see underground. You can't throw sound waves down and find fossils. You just have to look for them. So that's also still science fiction.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, Christian. We hope you get a chance to. We hope we get a chance to come see you at the Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh someday soon. And everyone else in the audience, thank you so much for attending. Remember to go to ncscifest.org, and you can find events all over the state happening all month to celebrate the North Carolina Science Festival presented by the Biogen Foundation. But for now, get your popcorn out and enjoy the movie, everybody. We'll see you later. Thank you.